Let's cut to the chase, have an honest conversation, and develop real answers. As a matter of fact, with Andrew Cuomo. Crime and violent crime is seemingly all we ever hear about in the news. Reports say crime has spiked across the United States and the American people are feeling less and less safe.
I don't feel safe on my streets anymore, and I really hope to see that there will be a change in New York City's overall environment.
What's the number one issue that's going to drive how you vote?
Honestly speaking, as a New Yorker born and raised, crime. The city is getting out of hand. Crime.
Crime. Crime. How long have you been in the city?
I've lived here my entire life.
Worse than like the 80s?
So maybe not as bad as the 70s, but yeah, I'm not old. Yeah, but it's the 80s. Yeah, I'd say it's getting there.
As a woman, like walking the city lately, it doesn't even feel safe anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joining me now is a legend in law enforcement, Ray Kelly.
A good thing is that shootings are down and murders are down. But the mugging crimes, the ones on the street are growing. They're high. And people talk about a brazenness where police are not around and people are getting robbed in broad daylight.
Is it the perception or is it the reality, Ray? How bad is the situation as you look at the conditions across the country?
I believe it's reality. The numbers show that it's reality. And even if it is perception in some places, that amounts to reality in their minds.
What I'm troubled by is the Trump-Biden race would turn out to be who's worse, not who's better. You know, it would not be an uplifting race. It would be another series of attacks and negativity and who's the best between two imperfect choices. And that's not good for the country, right? You want people to feel good about the future and not that they're just picking between two candidates, none of which they're really excited about.
If Huey Long or Father Coughlin or Charles Lindbergh ascended to the presidency instead of governor of New York, Franklin Roosevelt, I think the trajectory of America over the last 80 to 100 years would have been very, very different. So Donald Trump ascended to a spot. I thought of him differently in 2016 than I did, obviously, in 2020. I owned my mistake for supporting him. I would work tirelessly against him if that's the case, because Andrew, you and I can disagree on policy, okay? But what we don't disagree on is the integrity of our system and the democracy, okay? And you are right and my right to frankly get into the mix together, into the intellectual marketplace of ideas, the free marketplace of ideas, and joust with each other to come to the right conclusion. Donald Trump and his minions want to subvert the democracy.
Do you get a sense from the officials in Ukraine what they think is the likely outcome? What is the probable outcome of all of this?
Well, I think what they are most significantly prepared for is what you described, which is a war of attrition. And all the more reason it's going to be. They are not the mindset of the Ukrainians is a right-minded and very courageous person, has a very courageous personality, and they won't back off. They're going to take back their territory. It's a question of how long it takes, and it's a question about what kind of fatigue there is here and what the political will be here, especially as we go on to the next Congress and so on.
I know you're in New York. I know you're shooting a movie. I also want you to know that I am available to play parts of movies. I want you to think like De Niro, Pacino, Travolta, Brando genre, somewhere in there. And by the way, I have a lot of experience working with actors from politics. So I would feel right at home.
I might even suggest that most politicians have a lot of acting in them. Yes.
Yeah, they just don't have the union card. If you had to add lyrics to the rendition "We Didn't Start the Fire," what kinds of events strike you now that you would add to that list?
Oh, there's a lot. That song was written in 1989 when Tiananmen Square happened in China. That was how I ended the thing. And then there was Rock and Roller Cola was with Michael Jackson against this one. It was, and I thought this is the ultimate craziness. But it got weirder after that. Things just got really out of control. And here we are in the 21st century watching these crazy things happen, like the war in Ukraine. Who would have predicted these things would be happening? But they are. We thought we'd learn from the mistakes of history. We'd learn from the lessons of history, but we haven't.
We haven't. There is like a whole revival with your career. I mean, it's amazing. It's like the more you're out there, the more they want. How do you figure it, Bill?
I don't know. I started to try to figure it out, and then I just gave up because I keep getting asked, "What's the reason for your longevity?" And I keep answering, "Well, I haven't died yet." So I'm still alive. That's probably the reason for my longevity.
It was so badly handled from a substantive point of view, from a public relations point of view, that I think it's left everybody scratching their head.
Well, certainly, because this balloon first entered U.S. airspace over the Aleutians. It then traveled north into the Alaskan landmass, then south through Western Canada. There's like 1,000 miles of uninhabited land where the Pentagon could have taken this balloon down. And it showed a failure of the rules of engagement. And I think it showed a failure of officers to understand the nature of the threat. Because this was not some small object. This was large and it was unmistakable what it was, and it was maneuverable, which showed Chinese intentions.
I said it before, and I'll say it again, because we have to hear it. When the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, a Democrat, indicted Donald Trump, 76% of the American people said it was politically influenced. The majority of Democrats said it was politically influenced. The majority of Republicans said it was politically influenced. 76% of the American people said it was politically influenced. You don't get 76% of the American people to agree on anything. And one of the only things that we agree on is that the justice system is politically corrupted. Lady Justice, holding the scales, but she's peeking through her blindfold, and she's tipping the scales of justice. Why do you think Trump keeps getting indicted and his numbers in the polls keep going up? Because no one believes the justice system is anything but political. People have really lost faith in this government on a very fundamental level, just the basic institution of it. Because if there was anything that was supposed to be sacrosanct, it was that. You don't put people in jail because they're a political opponent, right? That's Putin does that, right? Isn't that shocking?
Well, look, there's no question that freedom of speech and equal justice under the law are maybe the two most important values in which to have a democracy. Now, the surprising thing about the polling on this is that I asked that question in our Harris poll, okay, do you think Trump should be indicted? Most Democrats say yes. Then I asked them, well, do you think he's going to be convicted? They say no. Then I said, well, do you think these payments are a political contribution? They say no. So what's even more troubling is that people today are willing to put partisanship over principle. They're willing to say, well, it's okay to indict him even though I know it's fake as long as it advances, stops him, right? And so too many people, not everybody, but too many people are accepting that these fundamental principles and values can be put out the window in order to get to a political objective.
Not everything the far left says is necessarily wrong, but it's this idea that when I say it, you have to agree with 100% of it or I'm going to attack you. It's not necessarily some of the policies that they stand for. It's actually a type of government that if it was ever instituted would be more like a dictatorship than a free democracy. So what you see now is too many people being afraid of being challenged when, let's look at it, who were the successful people who embraced this point of view? AOC was. But what AOC did was she worked the streets and knocked on every door when the incumbent Congress member was spending most of their time in Washington and had for years. You had this also happen to Assemblyman Joe Lentil, where someone comes in, they're much younger, they have a greater connection with the community that exists now, and they're able to do it. But I think if this argument were made more public and more people stood for something and stood by it, in the 2022 primaries in June, there were 9 of these sort of contested seats with the where the left candidates thought they had a chance and they won only one of them.
Well, I don't even even the dialogue has become twisted, okay? The progressives, who's a progressive? You are a progressive, and I am a progressive, and your father was a progressive, and my father was a progressive, and FDR started the Democratic Progressive Movement. So, they are the progressives. No. We are progressive. Somehow we become moderate because they are more extreme. Didn't make us moderate. Their position is extreme and unrealistic and doesn't serve the people of the state. The Supreme Court, as I'm sure you know by now, has come down with a number of decisions. They ended President Biden's student loan forgiveness program. They limited LGBTQ rights with private vendors. They limited interracial marriage couples with private vendors. And they ended affirmative action. Democrats in Washington need to think long and hard about how this happened and how they let it happen. Republicans are goal-oriented, and they are ruthless. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time Democrats fight fire with fire before the entire house burns down. I urge Americans for a new spirit of activism and outrage. Unemployment rate has dropped from 6.3 to 3.7 over the last 2 years. 339,000 jobs in May. The expectation was something like 195,000. 1.6 just about million jobs created so far this year. These are all apparently great economic indicators. In your opinion, how is the economy doing and how is the federal government handling the resurgence of the economy? What are they doing right? What should they be doing more of?
Look, we've all got to be very excited about how strong the economy is and how strong the level of employment is, and that when the economy surges, the people, the groups that are last hired and first fired are disproportionately the beneficiaries. What I think we have to worry about, we don't know how it's going to unfold, is we put an enormous amount of stimulus into this economy, and we, as a consequence, in addition to stimulating the economy a lot, we stimulated inflation a lot. And so if you look at people's purchasing power, the purchasing power of workers, it's a few percent below where a trend would have suggested it would be coming from 2019. And if you look at inflation, it is still too high. And that's why economic satisfaction isn't where we'd like it to be if you ask middle class Americans.
I like Vivek Ramaswamy, and he said a few things. He's actually done a better job articulating the culture wars and the wokeness, woke being broken a joke, with actual examples and with alternatives. People want to hear not just the problem, Andrew, but the solution.
Everyone has a gun. Everyone has an assault weapon, a former felon, no background check.
Has the right to.
Carry.
Has the right to. And I do think concealed carry is important. Constitutional carry is important. You know, background checks, non-politicized, are absolutely a legitimate part of the process.
But for what?
As they exist today.
If you can be a former felon and have a gun, then the background checks are meaningless.
Well, look, I think you and I, may respectfully agree to disagree on this one. I think that I am a Second Amendment absolutist, and I think the data, we may agree to disagree, but I think the data is on my side here that many of the areas where you have the tightest gun laws are also the areas with the highest violent crime rates in the cities of this country. And so that suggests to me that we're looking in the wrong place to address the violent crime problem, and we need to go to time-tested policies that do work, both in terms of effective policing and in terms of actual psychiatric and mental health institutions, and actually in communities where law-abiding citizens are able to use guns, or at least to own guns. That's something that actually deters many violent criminals from being able to roam the streets with guns as they do today. So I think we respectfully, disagree on that, but I do think that there's trade-offs to every policy, but this is the right trade-off that will most importantly secure liberty in this country, not only keep the government at bay, but even keep violent crime at bay. And I do think that the data does support that the cities with the tightest gun laws are the ones that tend to have the highest crime rates.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But saying law-abiding, law-abiding, which means a background check that eliminates felons, eliminates people with mental health issues, and then to say assault weapons that make it almost impossible for a police officer. The police officers step in when they get a chance, which is normally when the person reloads. You have a magazine that has 20 bullets, 30 bullets. Who wants to be the police officer who runs into that school?
So, look, I think that you and I are going to respectfully disagree on this one, even though I know we share the same objective of both making sure that we address the violent crime spike in this country. With due respect, and as you know, if we wanted to get, I'm excited for this to be the first of hopefully more conversations we have. If we had time for one more question topic after this, that'd be great. But to just close the loop on this one, the short answer is that case that you described is not a real case that presents itself very often compared to real life violence between a lot of violent criminals in cities who are breaking a lot of other laws, including themselves not going through the proper process of the violent crimes they commit to the way they even whether or not they acquired their firearms. So I think that if we're actually going to restrict firearms, we're going to see more lawbreakers still continue to own guns while law-abiding citizens don't.
And he's got something that you can't bottle, you can't buy, you can't sell. He has such joy on the job. Is anybody enjoying running for president of the United States more than Donald Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy? I mean, Joe Biden's not. Ron DeSantis doesn't look like none of these people look like they're enjoying themselves. Vivek is absolutely enjoying going around this country, looking people in the eye and connecting with them. And he's got an answer for everything.
And the right answer, I think, is not removing guns from law-abiding citizens, but removing those who are psychiatrically ill and dangerous and violent, remove those people from their community, which is controversial. But I do think that if we're serious about taking on the crime epidemic, the violent crime epidemic in this country, that's where we're going to have to land.
Yeah, reinstitutionalization would be more than controversial. I don't want to lose the issue in the Republican primary because it can't be just Democrats who support this.
Did you
it's
watch
Americans who support it.
Did you watch the Republican debate?
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a Fox News hosted debate, but they were actually asked about the issue of guns. They were asked. Not a single one of them was able to even discuss it. They all changed the topic. They started talking about the border and inner city crime. They can't even talk about it. They're cowards. That's who they are. They're dishonest liars. But the idea that they would even have an issue talking about how to stop the next shooting, it's like that's controversial. It is what I think every American should be paying attention to. They can't even fathom trying to stop the next one. I mean, I was so blown away. Every single one of them couldn't answer.
Yeah, but Fred, let me make a point. As a person who ran for office many times, yes, we need the Democrats to pass it, but Democrats have Republicans in their district too.
Yep.
And they're very aware of that. So I want to punctuate the point, even for the Democrats. Yes, this is predominantly supported by Democrats, but also the majority of Republicans. So it's not a suicide vote for a Democrat. You're not going to lose all the Republicans in your district because a majority of the Republicans support sensible gun control like an assault weapon ban. You know, you have Mayor Adams. What else can he do? I mean, he's trying to take care of the homeless. He's trying to take care of everything else. And then he has 130,000 migrants on top of everything else. So I think if I'm in the Biden administration now, that's what I'm focusing on. Let's get a real answer on the migrant issue, and then let's figure out how to play the politics. Make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But you know, it's interesting. Clearly, the Republicans, and in particular, I think this governor from Texas, they have clearly weaponized this migrant issue. We are a sanctuary city here in New York. And I think that the mayor has done an incredible job trying to manage this. I mean, on top of trying to manage, I guess, what did they used to call it, being the mayor of New York? The second hardest job in the United States of America. Yeah. I think that was an old Lindsay campaign motto. And it's a very hard city to manage. And the mayor of the city of New York has really taken on the issue by the horns, and he's and he's doing as best as he's able.
Hamas is pure evil, brutal, savagery. You're raping women. You're killing babies. There is no possible rationale in a semi-civilized society that would tolerate such behavior or equate that at all with policy differences. There's no doubt there's a good argument to be made that this situation needed a solution long before. It's gone on decades before any of us. The situation in Gaza is and has been very bad for a long time. That was the argument when I was in the Clinton administration, that you're going to need a two-state solution that has opportunity on the Palestinian side. There has to be a future besides rock and sand, right? So that's been an ongoing discussion. And I can see people being frustrated with that discussion. Yeah. But how you then take that position and look at this situation and say, well, I can understand why this happened. No, you can't understand why this happened. You can't understand why they beheaded babies. You can't understand why they raped women.
I totally get it. And that's what's so shameful about hearing it. I just don't know what happens here. I don't know there is no peace. No way. I don't know how the Israelis ever allow Hamas to exist in any real way again. I don't know what replaces it. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like in Gaza, let alone in the West Bank. I don't know what it means for America. The Secretary of State is supposedly on the ground here right now. You got a lot of American families that are involved in this. And I don't know how you justify not being on the ground trying to get them back. And I don't know how to do that. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to do. We can't even get them back from legitimate states, let alone these guys.
We have this silent inactivism that has been enabling. And that's one of the things that we have to understand and actually deal with going forward.
Exactly, Governor. And let's face it, yes, President Biden has been amazing in showing unwavering support for Israel. But he did just give 3 weeks ago $6 billion, $1 billion per hostage to Iran. And we want hostages released, of course. But only a fool would say that there's absolutely no connection between Hamas, who's funded by Iran, seeing that they got $1 billion per hostage and then taking 130 hostages. The hostages now complicate everything. Israel has a love for life. America has a love for life. And how will Israel go about this military incursion, knowing that Hamas will keep their threat? They will decapitate people like ISIS did on TV, and they'll post it because they're savages. They are monsters. They are animals. We shouldn't call them animals. Animals are amoral. These are fiends. They are evil, and we have to agree, right and left, progressive and conservative, Republican, Democrat, American and non-American, every religion, agnostics, atheists, that there is right and wrong. And right is those who value life, and wrong are those who demean it and even take bodies and desecrate them. And Governor, let me just say one final time, I'm so grateful for your friendship, for your support. I have deep affection for you. I have deep respect for you. You have always been there for my community and my people, and we will never, ever, ever forget it. Both you and your great, illustrious father, and God bless you.
Remember, this Democratic Party was not about boutique academic elitist propositions. The Democratic Party is not really about the woke movement. It is about waking up and realizing that we are losing the fight, and the fight is not about trivial cultural issues. It is a basic fight for freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom of sexual orientation, freedom of racial equality, freedom of opportunity for all, freedom for a quality education. That's what we are dealing with today. That is the question we're faced with. They are limiting our freedom. How ironic. The Republican Party, that loves to claim the American value of freedom, has actually limited freedom more than any time in modern history. When they say freedom, they mean freedom to live the way they think we should live. But my friends, that is not the definition of the word freedom. The fight is ours to make, and we must. Thank you for listening. Where are you from, Ibrahim?
I'm from West.
Yeah?
Yes, sir. You're good.
Thank you. Very cool. Nice
to meet you.
Thank you.
Happy.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a picture with you. Yeah, I'm going to show it to my daughter that I met you. You're very nice.
Here, you never left.